Hello everybody, welcome back to a brand new episode of our F1 23 Driver Career Mode. Hope you're all having a great day. Today we're coming off of a rough outing in the Spanish Grand Prix where Fernando Alonso announced he will be retiring at the end of the season and then went on the most dominant performance we've seen from any driver in this F1 23 Career Mode since its debut, of course, in June. Well, we're going fresh off of Fernando's home race to my home race. We are headed here into the Montreal area, a bit of a wet start to the weekend. All practices had a bit of rain, but qualifying in the race are currently forecasted to be nice and dry and sunny. So I think we're going to have a fun weekend here in Montreal at Circuit de Gilles Villeneuve now. So a rough outing. We had a spin in the later half of that race there in Spain that set us back. We still ended up P8, so it wasn't the worst drive in the world. But like I said, I'm hoping to replicate what, our teammate of Alonso did in his home Grand Prix, and that's just dominate. That would be pretty cool, but it's probably not going to be that easy, but we'll have to wait and see. Here we are in free practice 1, getting stuck behind our good friend of Logan Sargent. It didn't take long, of course, have a little bit of beef with our former Formula 2 rival here, as I was stuck behind him for about half a lap. It doesn't matter where it is, I hate driving around him.
I hope he steps on a Lego brick tonight.
My man, Sargent, going for the jugular with that radio comment, hoping I step on Lego. As you can see, P10 in FP1, stepping on Lego, by the way, if you've never done it. My goodness, it's painful. But here we come through into Saturday qualifying here now in our home Grand Prix. A beautiful sight here of the city of Montreal there in the background. I put on our yellow, white, and black helmet now. I love this helmet. I don't even want a modded helmet right now. I just really like the vibes of this helmet overall. But here we are in Q1. There was a big surprise. Not for me. I cruised through into Q2, but look at the surprise. Max Verstappen out. So clearly a rough first lap, and second lap something must have went wrong. So he does not make it. Q2 should be a pretty easy cruise into Q3. However, we were only P9 in Q1. It wasn't pretty. Q2 wasn't that pretty either. I was down to P9 and then invalidated my second lap, but thank goodness we would barely scrape through. So P9 in both Q1 and Q2. That's a little bit concerning, while my teammate of Fernando Alonso was top of the board for both of the qualifying sessions so far. So here we go. Q3, getting our one and only lap underway now, and currently on pole. You guessed it, Fernando Alonso here now as he continues to be on a hot streak now. We continue on through this first sector, and sector 1 was lightning quick here. You can see 3/10 advantage over Carlos Sainz and 6, so we know already that's at least decent. As we come through now the second chicane up towards the end of sector 2 and then down into the hairpin. Actually lost a little bit of time in sector 2 if you compare it to Carlos Sainz's lap time. So here we go, down the long back straightaway, down towards the final chicane. What can we do here? Really aggressive there, but we get through without any warnings or invalidations. Down the front straightaway. It's been a rough qualifying so far, but it will be a significant improvement in P4, still about 0.4 of a second off, but once again Aston Martin, Mercedes, 1, 2, 3, 4. Following this Grand Prix going into Austria, and the next one there will be a team meeting between Mercedes and Aston Martin as well, but let's head to the grid.
Here in Montreal, lights out is quickly approaching on this artificial island originally built for the World Fair in 1967. Now it's used for a World's Fair of a different kind, ever since Formula One first arrived here. We're back in Montreal for the Canadian Grand Prix. It's one of the fastest races of the season here at the Circuit Gilles Villeneuve, with around 60% of this 2.7-mile circuit taken at full throttle. There are 14 corners to navigate, the very last of which has its very own infamous history and could be the cause of a safety car today. Before we begin, let's take a quick look at the grid lineup for today's race. Fernando Alonso lines up on pole position, and starting next to them is George Russell. Looking down the rest of the grid, we have Hamilton, Golden Boy, Leclerc, Sainz, Norris, Gasly, Ocon, Tsunoda, Joe, Magnussen, De Vries, Albon, Oscar Piastri, Stroll, Verstappen, Sargent, Perez, and Valtteri Bottas begins the race from the back of the grid. Which of these talented drivers will come out on top today? It's just about time to go to the track for the beginning of the race, but before we do, Natalie Pinkham, what types of strategy do you think we can expect going into today's race?
Clearly, every car can't be as competitive as the next. Some are going to have a clear advantage over the opposition. So it's those teams that can think outside the box in terms of strategy that will come out on top today. I hope they do.
One important thing to note for this episode, so I had an issue with my full race replay saving, so unfortunately I couldn't get many replays of like events happening in the race other than from the race highlights, which is literally just a start. So we will also unfortunately not have Through the Grid due to that, because I couldn't get like a broadcast section of the Grand Prix. Most drivers starting on mediums.
Here we go then, the formation lap gets underway and the excitement here is building as we near ever closer to the start of the race. Which team will come out on top? Who's got their strategies right for today's race? Well, we'll soon find out. So as all the cars take their positions on the grid, the teams will be hoping their strategies pay off for them in today's race. The question I'm asking is which teams have got it right? Which ones have got it horribly wrong?
Alright boys, I don't see why we can't replicate what Fernando did. I'll try to make quick work of the Mercedes in front of me and see what we can do.
Yep, get after them and pass them. If we can get away from the Ferraris, we will be free to fight.
You hear myself and Mark on the radio, so of course trying to work as a team as Aston Martin, Mercedes, get away from the Ferraris, and then we can fight it out from that point on. Perez took a grid penalty, so both of the Red Bulls towards the back of the grid. Here we are, 35 laps home, Grand Prix racing, it's 5. Red lights, it's lights out, we are underway from the Canadian Grand Prix. Side by side, a great start there against Lewis Hamilton, against everybody, but we're covered in, so we can't do anything. Leclerc sent one up the inside of Hamilton, so we're 3 wide through turn 2, and now on the exit, you can see Hamilton gonna close the door on Leclerc as actually Charles tries to go around the left side. Not gonna quite happen, and he's side by side with myself into the chicane, but we get through. He backs out of it. So already the 1, 2, 3, 4 Aston Martin, Mercedes that we're looking for. Like I said in the next episode at the beginning of the Austrian Grand Prix, there will be a team meeting with team bosses and some of the driver comments you will hear as well, not only from myself, but maybe from Russell and Hamilton as well. Not Alonso, because it's so hard to get AI to be able to replicate his accent. Getting our first warning for track limits already on lap 1 of 35. That's not what you want to see. Nonetheless, ending of lap 1 was okay. Lap 2 trying to chase down Hamilton as we start lap 3. Now the DRS enabled, and we had speed in this car. It's pretty happy with the pace now. And we were already breaking free from the Ferrari of Leclerc and Carlos Sainz. He was just barely within the DRS as we actually come through to set the fastest lap of the Grand Prix. Alonso was driving away, but I was right up to the back of Hamilton and Russell early on here in this Grand Prix. Over 30 laps, of course, of racing remaining so far now. But yeah, you can see Hamilton, the back end, kind of kick around a little bit right there. So I was feeling pretty confident, and not very confident when I have a chicane like that that opens up the gap. But I was actually very quickly realizing it's going to be hard to pass Lewis and George Russell. Here I am right on the back of the Mercedes, but watch him take off. Actually, I cut the clip, so we continue to lap 7, but I was having a really tough time passing Lewis. And if you pay attention to the track map and you watch, of course, that green dot of Fernando Alonso out in front, he's continuing to drive away. Shades of what we saw in Spain, just not to the same extent, of course, where he was long gone down the road. He was still down the road a ways, and I was starting to get frustrated. We were on lap 9, coming to lap 10, and now an opportunity here to pass Lewis Hamilton, but it's taken way longer than I expected and wanted. Here we go, drag racing down into the first corner, nearly into the back of his teammate there, of Russell. We continue side by side. Now who's going to get through into third place? Now slipping around with the rear end right there. That's going to allow Hamilton to stay clear down into the right-hander. And now, of course, through the chicane we go. Once again, right on the back of Lewis now as we nearly made contact through the grass even. No warning, thank goodness, but this is getting spicy, and it was not over. I was quickly realizing, of course, that our chances of catching Fernando are very limited already. So we have to get a move on with it, because we're coming to 25 laps to go. That sounds like a lot of time in Formula 1, but 25 laps with a minute and 11 seconds or so so, minute 12-second lap times. Not a lot of time. Here we go down the long back straightaway, trying to put Hamilton in an awkward spot. I actually did not want to pass him here, so I let him have it, but I wanted to give him a bit of an awkward entry. I say it's a mission success, a big moment of oversteer, but we had to check up, and now here we go back to the right-hand side. What a battle this has been with Hamilton now, as we're going to go around the outside contact there with the 7-time world champion, but we get the job done.
All right, that took way too long. You must make quick work of George.
You hear Mark just saying, yeah, it took way too long to do that overtake. That was a quarter of the race, basically. And now we would quickly be running down the Mercedes teammate of Hamilton's, George Russell here. You think about Mercedes, they were dominant to start the first couple of Grand Prix, the first few, 2, 3. But we have since taken over with Aston Martin, but still pretty close overall. As we continue, here we go, maybe an opportunity up the inside of Russell into turn 1, firing it up into the corner. We pass him immediately. So lap 14, a lot quicker work on George, and up into the runner-up second place we go. But look at the gap to Fernando, 4.8 4.7 area seconds, of course, between himself and I is going to be difficult to gain, and that would be proven very, very quickly because the gap wasn't going down very well. It was actually starting to go up a little bit. We would kind of hover, though, around this 4.7 area. At moments, it would come down to the 4.6, 4.5, but then Fernando would stretch it back up by literally just a tenth or two to the 4.7, 4.8. So the pit window opens on lap 17. We had actually opened up a gap now to the Mercedes behind us. So out of the DRS range from Russell and Hamilton, we're going to pit at the end of lap 17 for the hard. So pay attention, that gap was 4.7 seconds when we started to enter the pit lane. Hamilton's going to pit with me. We'll see if he can do the undercut on his teammate of Russell. I know we can't undercut Alonso unless he stays out like 4 or 5 extra laps, and that's not going to be the case. He is going to pit at the end of this next lap. So we're going to come out in front of Lewis without any issues there. 2.2 second pit stop, a very competitive pit stop time right there. We will also re-enter the track with no traffic around us. So really best case scenario. But we would come back around, and Alonso had made his pit stop. So now let's see the gap, and Russell, I think, will get overtaken by Hamilton. Maybe not, it's going to be close if you look at the track map, but Alonso is basically the exact same gap, and actually no, I think even more. Yeah, it's up to 4.9, 5.0 seconds, and the gap would continue to increase as Logan Sargent would have a mechanical failure. That would be the end of his day. No virtual safety car, no full-blown virtual or physical safety car. But the gap between myself and Alonso going up 5.6 seconds now. He sets the fastest lap with a 1:11.563. And I cross the line in a 1:12.0. It gets worse again. Alonso sets the fastest lap, coming to lap 22. And I'm trying to just find all the time I can, and we find more time, just not enough. 5.8 seconds, another lap later. Well, it just seemed like Fernando was continuing to get faster and faster. And by the end or tail end of this lap, into the hairpin, 6 seconds we were now approaching between myself and my teammate. Watch this, through the chicane again, and Alonso runs another fastest lap of 1:11.427, and I was starting to get pretty frustrated at this point. What the I don't know how he's going that quick. I didn't get it. However, there'd be a bit of a turn of the tables, and this caught me a bit off guard. We run in a 1:11.5, and suddenly, after Alonso set that streak of fastest laps, his pace completely flatlined, and the gap was no longer increasing. It wasn't going down yet. We still have 11 laps to go in this Grand Prix, but you see the gap, and we had driven away from the Mercedes team in the whole process of this, and I hadn't even realized it. I was so focused on that gap, and now the gap was starting to come down, and I wasn't really improving my lap time. The fastest lap of mine was still a 1:11.5, but look at us just wheeling it. I was pushing extremely hard, risking track limits to even get a 3-second time penalty, because that was like worst case scenario, second place. We're 3 seconds ahead of Hamilton anyways. I'm going for it. We're going to push hard. By lap 28, the gap's down to 5.2 seconds. That's only about an 1/8 of a second gain, but by the end of the lap, we're into the 5-second, 4.9 second range. So all of a sudden, although we're not running faster, after Alonso set that streak of laps, he had dropped off quite a bit, and for the first time in this whole Grand Prix, he's not the fastest car on the track. It's myself. 4.2 seconds a gap here now, here in my home Grand Prix in Canada, Montreal, not wanting to back down against this fight with Alonso that we've had a few times this season, and he has gotten the best of us multiple times, other than Monaco, the only track we've beaten him for a race victory, but the gap was continuing to come down. 3.5 seconds as we came to 5 laps to go. 3.2 through the chicane here on the back half of the track. 2.9 seconds. So aggressive on the track limits, but it almost seemed like it was helping me because I was hitting the corners better than I had all Grand Prix long. 2.5 seconds as we approach the final 3 laps of this Canadian Grand Prix. I thought it was over for us, but it's proven not. Through the chicane, look how aggressive we're getting. I mean, we're right on the fine line of margin on strict corner cutting, of course, with the 2 seconds now being the gap as we approach 2 laps to go. Now dipping down into the 1 point, whatever you want to call it, second bracket, but I didn't gain a whole lot on this lap and actually lost a little bit of time, but I burned through my battery, and that would allow me to close back at least a 2.0 through the chicane. Really aggressive again. We gained 0.3 of a second with 2 laps to go in this Grand Prix. Stroll in his home Grand Prix as well. A mechanical failure will take him out in the final 2 laps. Heartbreaking there for Lance. 1.6 seconds a gap. Are we gonna get there? The race is on. I didn't drive, this hard and close this much just to finish second to Fernando at this point now. I believe we can get him. Now the gap wouldn't come down much for the rest of the lap because Fernando realizing what happened, and he was using his battery, but he had a bad chicane. It's going to be the final lap. Less than a second separate the two of us. What a drive we have made in the final half of this race. Of course, being on the hard compound tire through Sector 1. Alonso, though, being able to maintain 0.8 or 0.7 of a second as we come through these final moments in Sector 1. And the gap hadn't really closed as much as I was hoping. It was still 0.6 of a second. Now, down towards the second to last chicane, and you can see it's not happening as much as I thought it was going to. Now Alonso's in full Bodos on that ERS button, just pushing it, and he is in control here now as we approach the final DRS zone, giving it everything. I got hard on the battery, hard on the gas pedal. You saw the rear end kick out. 0.6 of a second. DRS activated. What's it going to be? And it's not enough. I don't got enough battery. Alonso is in perfect shape here now. He goes into harvest mode into the chicane, and we're going to gain a huge amount of ground, but on the exit he's going to re-engage the battery, and now going to harvest. It's not enough. Alonso wins in Canada. It's heartbreak for us in the home Grand Prix. We thought it might happen. We gained a huge amount of time in the final part of this Grand Prix, but it just wasn't enough. Heartbreak here in Canada. Albon, driver of the day. Let's head to the podium.
A victory for Aston Martin. The team will certainly be celebrating tonight. So, Natalie, what do you think helped them deliver this result?
I really feel the track layout combined with the track temperatures we saw today suited their car. These cars come alive when the tyres are just at the right temperature, and the driver did a great job managing that as well. They just look so comfortable up there. It's like anything, it always looks so easy when it all just clicks.
I think we're going to remember this one for a while as the what could have been Grand Prix, and honestly, now we have to pinpoint this loss down to the first, 10, 11 laps of the Grand Prix where we were behind Lewis and just couldn't find a way around him. Because if we could have, say, passed him even a lap earlier, it could have been a completely different scenario, but it shouldn't have taken us as long as it did, and it wasn't, that I was slow. I just made a few errors and it just overall struggled to find a way past him, and once we did, it was a lot easier to get past Russell, who had no DRS help, of course, from anybody like Lewis did, and yeah, it is what it is. But frustrating. I almost wish I could have scripted this one just so I could have won the race. But we don't do that here. We are here for, of course, the raw, natural outcomes of these races, and it's very frustrating in a moment like that because what could have been? What a story it could have been. How about both the Red Bulls outside of the points? We know they got points pace, obviously. They've fallen off hard this season. Verstappen is so far back. He's not winning the championship. He's not going 4 in a row like Vettel did. It's pretty straightforward at this point. Pretty simple, common knowledge. But Albon, 12th in the standings. A great season for him as he continues to impress for Williams. But yeah, that's going to wrap it up. We have a team meeting next episode in Austria with a sprint race. I'll see you guys then. Have a great day, everybody.